This evening from the New Zion Missionary Baptist Church, and let me say how delighted we are to have you join in this, our second initiative of Christian Education Initiative. And this particular workshop today will include resume writing and interviewing skills. And we are very, very excited about your being here, those who are virtual as well as those who have come to join us in the sanctuary. This is a very needful workshop, and it's just a part of many that are forthcoming. So we wanted to take an opportunity to welcome you from myself, Pastor W.F. Wright, who pastors New Zion Missionary Baptist Church, and to welcome you here to this workshop this evening. I'm going to introduce now the chair of our deacon ministry here, who is a part of this illustrious group, in the presence of Craig Bryant, Deacon Craig Bryant, and he's going to come up and share with you at this time. Deacon Bryant.
Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to the Resume Writing and Interview Skills Workshop, as Pastor introduced. I'd like to take this time to introduce our speaker this evening, this afternoon, Dr. Darrell Harris. He lets us call him Darrell. But Dr. Darrell Harris, Jr. has been a member of the New Zion Missionary Baptist Church family since 2009, when he moved to this area. He has since become a dedicated husband, father, leader, striving to positively impact the community. Dr. Harris was a Division I athlete. I think he played football. So we had some football stories, but he was a Division I athlete at Hampton University, where he graduated with a bachelor's degree in education. He then went on to move to Greensboro to receive his master's in education from NC-A&T, followed by a doctoral degree from UNCG. Dr. Harris has been a public school administrator since 2012 and a principal at 3 local high schools. 3. So he's been through the ringer. Dr. Harris also worked as a professional and mentor and leadership coach, and currently serves on several community boards. He's on the advisory board for the State Employees Credit Union. He's also on the advisory board here at New Zion Missionary Baptist Church. He's on the board of directors, and he serves on the board at the Goodwill as well, Goodwill Industries. So without further ado, I introduce Dr. Harris.
Thank you, Dick. Good afternoon, everybody. Like you heard, I'm Darrell Harris. I'm happy to be here with you guys today and just share a little bit of my knowledge and skills when it comes to resume writing and interview skills, right? So why is this guy standing in front of me talking? Well, as a public school administrator, I've had the opportunity, I will call it, to review several hundreds of resumes each and every year and conduct several interviews. And through those experiences, I see a lot of great things, and I also see a lot of not so great things, right? And I leave those experiences sometimes thinking, wow, only if somebody would have let this candidate know this or tell this candidate that he shouldn't do that, when sending in things or being a part of an interview process. So I just want to share some of those tidbits with us today. We have an exciting event planned, and we'll jump right into it, all right? So I'll go through a couple slides, but we'll have an opportunity to ask any questions that you guys have at the end, and we'll go from there. We have a lot of great resources for the folks that are here today in the church parking lot, and we'll jump right in. So we'll go over an overview of some best practices when it concerns resume writing, and then we'll talk about the before, the during, the after the interview process, right? Because it is, in fact, a process. It's not a singular event, right? We'll do some resume review, looking at some resumes and giving some folks some feedback for those that are with us and present today. We'll also have an opportunity for those folks to do some mock interviews and put some folks through the ringer and a little stress test. But just like with anything else, the more you practice, the better you become at it. And I don't think enough of us think of practicing when it comes to interview opportunities, right? So we'll do that. I just want to also share a disclaimer, right? I'm in the education field, so there are certain things I look for, and that turn me on and turn me off when it comes to the interview and resume writing process in my field, right? But you might not be applying for a job in education, right? You might be interviewing or writing something for a scholarship or for something in the business world, right? So my disclaimer is just to remember to be honest with yourself, right? To bring your best self, your best version of yourself, and be confident, right? Because a lot of what you'll hear at workshops like these are someone's opinion, right? I might love when a candidate talks about their characteristics of being loyal and dependable in their resume. And another colleague of mine might not like that at all, right? So some of these things are preference of the person you are interviewing with, right? So it's very important to keep those things in mind, all right? So when it comes to resume writing, you should keep in mind that is your initial opportunity to grab the employer's attention, right? So before you even get to an interview, someone's gonna read your resume, right? And that resume will get you in or keep you out from that interview, right? So we talk about first impressions. Your resume should be considered your first impression, all right? And it should be edited before each submission, tailored to a specific job, right? You don't know how many resumes I'll look through, and I'll have a different name of a school. Might not even have my name, might have someone else's name. It might have some outdated information about their last employer because, again, we sometimes will make one resume and we'll share it with everybody and it's not specific or tailored. So make sure that anytime you're sending a resume out, you look through it, you edit it, and you tailor it to that specific job or company or organization, all right? A couple of key components that should be in every resume. You should always have your contact information. It would suck to have a beautiful resume and turn it in, and the folks that want to hire you or interview you can't get in contact with you, right? So make sure you have your contact information. Obviously, you want to state your objective. That's something that you would edit and update each and every time because your objective should be different if you're going into the business sector or the educational sector, or if you're writing something for a scholarship, right? Your summary of your qualifications, what makes you qualified for this particular job. My qualifications that I highlight for a business job might be different than the qualifications I highlight for an education job. Your work experience obviously is very important. Your educational background, and then any relative skills to that field and that position. Again, hence why it's very important to make sure we're updating and tailoring that resume each and every time we send it out. So again, this is an opportunity to highlight your accomplishments, just not your responsibilities, right? So my responsibility as a principal is to oversee a building of 1,200 students and 120 staffs, right? But some of our accomplishments might include our test scores. It might include the number of scholarship dollars our kids are getting. It might include how many kids we're putting in college, right? So those are some of the accomplishments that I would highlight versus just telling what I do, right? So keep that in mind. Not only what you do, but what you did well. You want to highlight that in your resume. So formatting and design of your resume is very important, right? And that's another preference thing. From my experience, my preference is to keep your resume at 2 pages, right? I'm very busy. I don't have time to look through 9 pages of everything you've done since 1999, right? So we want to update our resumes again and make sure that our most recent and most relevant information is there that applies. Now, if something is relevant to the job and it was a while ago, keep it on there. But if it's not relevant to the job, you can take it off, or if it's outdated, I would suggest taking it off as well. But again, folks that are reviewing resumes, they don't want to be bogged down with 4 and 5 pages of an individual's resume, all right? Include your professional references, right? One thing that gets me is when somebody I see on the line that says, references provided upon request, right? So you want a job with me, but you're gonna make me do some work to go get some stuff from you, right? So no, list your references, give those to me up front, so that I'll have everything I need if you're somebody that I'm interested in hiring, all right? And then always grammar check your work, right? Grammar check your resume before you send it out. Have a family member, a peer, a friend look over it, give you some feedback before you send it out, because again, it's your first impression, and you don't want to send something with a bunch of typos or a bunch of grammatical errors, all right? So we'll transition a little bit now to the interview, right? So we've gotten the resume written, right? So now we're ready to shop it around, and somebody called us, right? So what now do we need to be considering when it comes to the interview, right? So it's an opportunity, again, to highlight yourself. And remember, these interviews could be something for a scholarship. It could be something for a community organization, right? So our fraternities, our sororities, these could be for, obviously, opportunities to advance your education, like in a graduate program, not just employment opportunities. And it's very important to think, right? So some interviews might take an hour, hour and a half. You might have multiple interviews, but most interviews are gonna last from 10 minutes to 45 minutes, 30 minutes, right? And that 10 to 30 minutes can be way more important than anything you write on your resume, all right? So we wanna make sure if you get your foot in the door to that interview, we take real good advantage of that opportunity and put that best foot first. All right, so now post-COVID, right, you'll see a lot more interviews happening online, right? And again, it's still an opportunity to put your best foot first. You could be a great candidate, but if your internet connection is lousy, then guess what? It was a lousy interview, all right? So make sure you're familiar with the different virtual platforms and video conferencing platforms. I would say if you have an online interview, you practice using that platform prior to the actual date and time of that interview. Make sure you're somewhere where you have good lighting. Make sure you're somewhere where the internet connection is strong and there's not a lot of noise in the background. So don't come to my house to try to do your online interview because it's very noisy with all we got going on over there, all right? So you want to make sure that you've blocked out that space and time for yourself. Just because it's online doesn't mean you don't dress professionally, and at least from the top up, right, where they're going to see you, okay? And if you got some shorts on underneath, just make sure you don't stand up in front of the camera. Make sure your camera's off before you do that, all right? But you want to, again, make sure you have your stable connectivity, your internet, your lighting is all quality, all right? And be well prepared. Know about the company you're applying for. And we'll talk about that a little bit on this next slide. So before, right? So I've broken this presentation down into 3 parts, right? So before the interview, during the interview, after the interview. The largest part of this presentation is about before the interview. That's the most important part. That's the preparation, right? So there's some different ideas around a cover letter, right? But cover letters are still accepted in most professions. So if you're going to do a cover letter, it's an opportunity for you to expound upon some characteristics or some skills that you might have that don't make it into your resume. But again, it's an opportunity to catch the employer's attention, right? Your cover letter will make me want to read your resume, all right? But your cover letter doesn't need to be 2 pages long either. It doesn't need to be a page long. And in fact, nowadays, especially if you're emailing me your resume, the context of your cover letter could just be in the body of the email, right? So you don't have to have 2 and 3 attachments to the email. Your cover letter can be the body of the email attached with your resume, all right? And again, it's another opportunity for a first impression, entice your employer to read your resume, and create and use professional email addresses. That's very important. You wouldn't imagine how many emails I get from Hot Mama 335. And you want a job with kids. I mean, you might be great with kids, but let's find another email address. And that's very important. And we laugh about it, and it's great. But it's an underrated thing that we don't think about, right? And I think, again, when I review resumes, when I see emails, I just make a list of all the things I wish somebody would have told somebody, right? So we're just sharing those things today. So make sure you have a professional email address. It could be your first name, your last name. It could be a title. It could be anything other than a nickname. But it should be your first name, your last name, or somewhere in that space, all right? Again, you check your grammar. And before you go into an interview opportunity, you want to research the company. You want to know their mission, their vision. You want to know their values, right? What better of a way to sell myself to be a part of an organization rather than knowing about that organization so I can highlight how I fit into that organization, right? Maybe look at some statistics, some trends, where the company organization is going, so you can sell yourself on how I fit with the direction that the company's going in. There's no way to do that if you don't do a little research beforehand, all right? And it's also very flattering, right, when you're sitting across and somebody's telling you about all the things that you guys have done because they've done their homework on you, all right? So another opportunity to make a good impression. So also before, again, just more preparation. There are some common interview questions that we'll share today with you guys that will probably be in just about any interview, right? I don't care where you go, somebody's gonna ask you about your strengths. They're gonna ask you about your opportunities of growth. They're gonna ask you to tell you about yourself. So you could practice those things prior to any interview, right? But again, the important thing is that you're just practicing. Get your clothes out the night before, right? Don't be scrambling and then now your shirt's wrinkled or your pants are in the cleaners, right? Choose appropriate attire and prepare for any necessary materials, right? You wanna have your notebook, you wanna have your copies of your resume ready, you wanna have all that stuff ready to go in preparation. Be on time, which is actually being there early, right? So if your interview's at 10 o'clock, don't roll in at 10 o'clock. Your interview started at 10, so you need to be introducing yourself to the secretary at 9:45, all right, and asking them where you sit and wait, all right? You want to confirm the location, what door do I go in, what address am I going to? And something my mom taught me, I'm gonna ride out to that place maybe the night before just to see how long it's gonna take me. Make sure there's nothing unexpected going on that I run into in the morning that'll prevent me from being there on time. If you find yourself in an unavoidable situation, things happen, right? There's nothing worse than not showing up at all or showing up late, right? So you pick up the phone and you let them know. Some might accept it, some might not, but they definitely won't accept you not showing up at all or showing up late with an excuse to why you're late. All right, so just keep that in mind. How far is your travel? We talked about that. Where do you enter? Who do you ask for, right? I'm here to see Dr. Harris. I have an interview with him at 10 o'clock. Boom, everyone knows why you're here. They know who they need to contact for you and get you going and on your way, all right? Remember that you're being evaluated by all folks of that organization, from the person that buzzes you in at the door if you're in the school, to maybe the hall monitor or one of the secretaries that greet you. They're going to talk and say, oh, Dr. Harris, that person was very rude, or that person was very pleasant. And we sat and we talked a little bit. I had a real good feeling about her. And all those things matter. You're always interviewing. When you're looking for a job, you're always interviewing. And that's something a mentor of mine told me once, because you never know who you're running into. You might meet somebody today that is an entrepreneur and is looking for something or someone to fill a position for them. And you're either going to speak yourself in a positive light or you're going to do something that turns them off, right? But we're always interviewing. And that's written communication, that's verbal communication. Make sure you're giving everyone that courtesy and that politeness that you would for the person who's making those decisions, all right? Utilize family and friends, right? We talk about practice. Utilize those that are close to you. Practice introducing yourself. Practice a handshake, right? We want a firm, confident handshake. Elevator speech. What is an elevator speech? Well, when you get on the elevator, by the time you get on and press that button to wherever you're going, you probably got about 30 seconds till you get off. If there's somebody of importance on that elevator, you got 30 seconds to sell yourself. You got 30 seconds to tell them who you are and what you're about. So practice that. Practice being able to concisely sell yourself. And then we call that an elevator speech. And it could be an introduction of who you are, what you do, what you're good at. And then 30 seconds, the doors are open and you shake their hand and say goodbye. But you also might be asked to do that at the beginning of an interview. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Well, don't go on for 4 and 5 minutes about yourself because I got another interview right after you, right? So give me a short elevator speech so you can practice that with your friends and your family. Practice asking thoughtful questions and answering questions that we talked about might be typical questions in any interview, right? So again, going through the practice process. Your nonverbal behaviors, eye contact, facial expressions, your tone. Again, all that it speaks to your confidence. All that speaks to your ability to be able to communicate well with folks. But again, the more you do it, the better you'll be at it. So communication, practice is very important, all right? Practice, practice, practice. So we're ready for the interview now, right? We prepared, we practiced, we know where we're going, we know what we're wearing, we sent our cover letter out, we got our resume typed. Now we're sitting in there, we got the interview. Yes, thank you. All right, thank you. So, what do you wear? Some folks might tell you things are a little different now in 2023 than they used to be, but professionalism is professionalism, right? So just some general rules of thumbs, right? And you know, you want to keep in mind what you're interviewing for, right? If I'm interviewing for a job at maybe Mellow Mushroom, where the culture of Mellow Mushroom and the attire of Mellow Mushroom is a little different, then I might bring a little different style to what I'm wearing. But in a traditional sense, in a traditional interview situation, you will want to wear some solid colors, some dark pantsuits, and this is for men and women, their skirts, but something solid, whether it's a tie or a scarf, matching socks or pantyhose for ladies, dark black or dark brown shoes, closed toes. And a rule of thumb, I think, if just so you don't go wrong, they should remember you after the interview, not what you had on, right? You want them to remember you, not your outfit. Oh, you know, who was that? The lady with the real long fingernails, or the guy that had on a baseball shirt instead of a tie, right? So you don't want them to remember what you had on. You want them to remember you in the interview and what you had to offer. You want to show enthusiasm. Right, so I took time to bring you in. I want you to be excited about the opportunity. I want you to show that you're excited about the possibility of you being a part of this company, this organization, or this team. Actively listening. So what does active listening look like? Maybe some head nods, right? Maybe some facial expressions to know I'm hearing, I'm understanding, I'm with you. So responding to questions in full. Provide specific examples, right? So if I ask you a question, you'll give me not just an answer, but an explanation of the answer, okay, and how you specifically did something. So, example might be, what's very important with working with kids? Well, building relationships is very important. Well, I can stop there, or I can tell you how I build relationships, what strategies or techniques I use to build relationships with students, right? So that's what we talk about when we say expounding or giving specific examples to support your answers, all right? Prepare to discuss your previous accomplishments, strengths, and opportunities for growth, right? So we didn't say weaknesses. We didn't say strengths and weaknesses, right? We said opportunities for growth, right? That lends to a growth mindset and lets an employer know you're always growing. I would much rather hear someone tell me that they're working on becoming more balanced and organized versus them telling me, my organizational skills are terrible, right? We're communicating the same thing, but it's in a different way. You're letting me know that you're working on that. You understand that that's an area of growth for you, and you're working towards it. All right? And be able to tell the interviewer about yourself, again, briefly. We talked about an elevator speech. You should be able to do that. And again, you won't be able to do that unless you practice it. All right? So be able to explain your interest in the position. One of the questions I ask all the time is, why in the world do you want to work in a school? Right? And folks have to answer that. And I get a lot from that answer, all right? So when you're going into an interview situation, you need to be prepared to tell that employer why you want to be a part of this organization. Describe your future academic or career plans, right, and how this position aligns with that. You want to be able to discuss how where you are with emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills, especially in today's world, right? Be prepared to discuss how you handle difficult situations, how you work with others, how you handle conflict, right? Right now, in today's world, in today's society, that is a skill I think that is underrated. It's also a skill that many folks don't have, unfortunately. So you want to be able to highlight that and be prepared for any questions surrounding that. Also, adaptability and flexibility, right? So how can you explain how you're prepared to adapt to change and new challenges? I'll tell you, in the school system, there's no 2 days that are alike, right? But even in any other world, I can imagine everyone sitting in front of me have new challenges that they face at work daily, regardless of what they do, right? And how well are you able to adapt to those changes and those challenges? I think it's very important for us to sell ourselves, to let our employers know that we can have the flexibility needed to face the changing of expectations that might happen at any job. All right, bring extra copies of your resume. They might not need them because they might have printed them, but just in case they didn't, you have it and you look very prepared, right? Very responsible. Bring something to take notes with, even if you're drawing a picture, right? But it looks like you're taking some good old notes. But you should take notes and you should write down the folks' name that you're interviewing with, because later on I'm gonna tell you to send them an email. But if you don't know their name, you ain't gonna be able to do that. All right. So note the names and the titles of those who you're emailing with. Do your best to pronounce their names. And if you mispronounce the name, it's okay to ask them how they pronounce their name, and ask for forgiveness if you mess it up, right? It just shows that you care, and that their name is important to you. You sit up straight, you don't slouch, you keep eye contact with who you're speaking with. Sometimes you might interview with 2 or 3 different folks. And if this person over here asks you a question, make sure your eye contact is there when they're asking you a question and when you're answering it. And make sure you're giving that individual attention to each one of those interviewers in that session. All right? Keep your hands out of your hair, right? There's nothing up here to distract me, but keep your hair, out of your face, and make sure, it's okay to talk with your hands. A lot of us do, and that's fine. But you want to do anything, you want to keep from anything that's going to distract the employer from what you're talking about. All right? And enter and depart confidently, right? Firm handshakes, polite greetings, and obviously thanking them for the opportunity to participate. And turn your cell phone off if you can, unless you got something going on that you have to take a call if it comes up. But I would share that up front. I got my ringer on, it's on vibrate, but my child is sick at school, and just in case they call, I just want to give you a heads up. Other than that, keep your phone in your bag. I don't even want to hear it buzzing because it's going to take my mind off of you who's interviewing with me, all right? So you can't see because my little picture's there, but this is after the interview. So the interview's done, you made it through, right? You might have sweated a little bit, but it's done, all right? So afterwards, you want to always ask some questions. Most interviews I ask them, do you have any questions? And after I've asked them 10, 20 questions, they have no questions, right? I said, well, we sat here this whole time, you don't have nothing for me, right? So prepare some questions going in. And you can have some generic questions that might fit any situation. I got a couple up for you. What characteristics do your best employees demonstrate, right? That doesn't speak to education or business or the fast food industry, right? It's flexible. What are 2 things that make you proud to be a part of this company or proud to be a part of this team, right? I think those are safe questions that show the employer that you're invested in this opportunity, right? So you want to make sure you go in with some questions. Don't ask them 5, 10 questions, all right? Find 2 questions that you're solid and comfortable with, and make sure you ask some questions at the end of the opportunity. Don't ask a question that was already discussed, right? That tells me what? You weren't paying attention. You weren't listening to anything we talked about. Don't ask me something that was on our website or something, some materials that I've given you that just tells me you didn't look at it, you didn't read it. So again, make sure that if you do have those things, you access that information prior to, all right? And then after the interview, you want to follow up with an email. A thank you email, thank you for the opportunity, express how you're grateful for the opportunity, and then this is your opportunity to tie any of your strengths again, just to reiterate any of your strengths that tie to that specific position, all right? And again, before you hit send, make sure you do some grammar check or let somebody take a look at it for you. So again, we just went through just some basic before, during, and after, some best practices. Again, in different worlds, in different spaces, some things are, I guess, more prevalent than others, but if there's one thing I want you to take away, it's the practice, right? Practice with some family, practice with some friends. If you have your resume ready, make sure we're editing it every time we send it out. No two resumes should look the same. I don't care if you're applying to Burger King and McDonald's. Those two resumes should still be different, right? So make sure that we're editing our resumes, make sure we're exuding that confidence when we step in to any opportunity, and we're putting our best foot forward. So again, we have an opportunity to put some of this into motion and practice today. We'll have some resources here from the community to connect our folks here with, and we're excited to do that. So before we transition, I'd like to see if there are any questions about anything that we presented this afternoon. Before we transition, I'd be happy to take any of those. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely, and that's a great question. The question that was, if you didn't hear it, it was about taking notes, right? And if you remember, I preferenced this with, in different fields and different folks, there's different preferences, right? My preference might be for you to take some notes. You might go on another interview, and the preference might be, make sure you give me all your attention, right? So the question was, is it okay to go into an interview and ask, do you mind if I take some notes? And I think that is perfectly okay. Actually, I think that it's something I wish I would have thought of and shared with you. I think that's a great point. I think if you're asking if it's okay, then you'll learn what their preference is right then and there, right? And then you'll be able to follow suit. So that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. And yes, I would definitely say it's okay to ask, do you mind if I take some notes during our interview? And if they say, oh, well, we got a lot of information, we allow you to listen, perfectly okay. You came ready anyway, and it doesn't take anything away from your interview. Great question. Any others? So the question was, if you stepped away from work, maybe you're between jobs and there's a gap, and now you're putting your resume out there. I've seen resumes where someone says, well, I was a stay-at-home parent, and they list the different tasks and responsibilities that they had, right? I'd prefer to see that, and this is my preference, but I would prefer to see that than a gap. Then, your last employment opportunity was in 2005, and now I'm wondering, right, well, what has he been doing since 2005? Well, if it's on your resume that you stepped away for medical issues, or if it's on your resume that you stepped away to raise a family, or you went to Ghana for a missionary trip, right? I think it's very appropriate to put that on there on your resume, because one thing employers are going to look for is a consistent work history, right? They want to see that you've been employed. They want to see that you didn't go from job to job to job to job, but they also want to see that you didn't have a long break in between. And if you did, I think it's very important that you explain that to your employer, right? So great point. Thank you for bringing that up.
little bit of a comment, kind of piggyback on the last question that was asked about potentially having a gap. As a mother who's been a stay-at-home parent before and as well, one of the things I try to encourage people to recognize is that there are so many tangible skills that we have, even in parenting or being a caretaker, or even, as a Girl Scout cookie mom, which I've done before, managing a budget, managing a team, So I always try to encourage people to take whatever experiences that you've had and look at how those can apply to what it is that you're seeking. And a lot of times, we may see something, job opportunity or, other type of opportunity and be like, oh, I don't really meet that criteria that they have listed. But then if we think about the experiences that we've had, we can take those things and be able to show someone how it applies. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, great point, thank you. And sometimes all experience isn't work experience, right? You might volunteer at a church, you might work at a rec center and volunteer and help out there with children. You could be doing a number of things that might not you might not have a check for, but there's still skills and opportunities that you want to highlight that you've done during that time and that gap. So thank you for mentioning that, absolutely.
Okay, let me go first. I have a few questions. So I know different places, for instance, like CV in the educational realm is a different type of quote-unquote resume. Is there different types of resumes that they should be utilized in different fields? That's one question. And then my second question is, I have a teenage daughter, so I want her to go ahead and start her resume, even though she's not had a job, right? But like Reverend Jackson was saying, she's done certain things, that she can showcase or whatnot, highlight. What's the best age? Like I have challenged her to start her LinkedIn account just to get into the habit of things. Like, what are some other resources and tools that teens can use to get into that?
All right, so great question. So the first part, yes, there are different types of resumes. The most prominent one that comes to my mind is the adult education space, right? Your CVs, what are they, curricula vitae, in the college world, right? And again, it's still an opportunity for you to highlight what you've done. So the gist of those are the same. The titles might be different in different spaces, but the gist of those are the same. And the great thing about resumes is there's normally a template for just about anything you need nowadays, right? You can ask Google for a template for a job at a university. You can ask for a template on a job in construction or in business management, right? So there's different templates that are out there for you, so you're not having to recreate the wheel. There's resources like NC Works that will help you develop those job-specific resumes, right? And as far as our teenagers, right, and our students, your counselors and your administrators are great resources to help you start drafting those resumes, because oftentimes we think, or our students think, that they don't need a resume or they don't have to have a resume because they haven't had a job. But hopefully, right, if they've been doing what they need to do in school, they've got a lot of experiences that they can highlight, right? If I'm an employer of a place that works with high schoolers, I want to see what your GPA is, right, which you can put on your resume. I want to see what clubs or extracurricular activities you're involved in, right? Are you an athlete? Are you a part of the National Honor Society? Are you in a Girl Scouts or a Boy Scouts, right? So what things do you do outside of just being an everyday student? And if our kids are busy outside of school, maybe I play Little League softball, maybe I play travel softball, maybe I'm a part of an AAU basketball team. Those are all great experiences because it can highlight your ability to work with others. It can highlight your ability to be able to balance school and extracurriculars, right? It highlights all those things if you're intentional about putting that in the resume. So especially of our kids that are active, right? There's a lot that they can highlight in the resume, and it doesn't have to be that they had a job or a summer camp job. And maybe they did. Maybe it wasn't a long job. Maybe it was, they cut grass over the summer. informally. They didn't have a business card or a website, but guess what? You did some lawn maintenance for 2 months, right, in your off time. So students still have great opportunities to highlight the things that they're doing, but they got to be intentional about connecting it to skills and to characteristics.
One thing that Dr. Harris was saying that's implied that parents should get is that giving your children the opportunity to experience a lot of different things go well into the resume, including volunteerism. As a person who's interviewed for internships of high school students and college students, that's one of the things I look for. Have they been active in other different types of activities? Have they volunteered? One of the greatest things that a student can put on their resume is the things they've volunteered doing, because that shows initiative, that shows caring for the community, and all those things that, as an organization, you value in a potential intern or hire.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for
Well,
sharing.
he has answered my questions, and that was in terms of resume writing and the templates that are available. How would a person who has not done that for a while assure themselves of a good process, and how could they get help?
Yes,
You
yes.
know, and I think you answered that.
Yep. Thank you. Yes, plenty of resources out there. Even if you just have a laptop with Microsoft Word on it, they'll throw you a template. But Google is a resource, and your local resources, depending on where you live. If you're here in the Triad area, NC Works is a great opportunity or resource for you as well.
I have a question. For someone maybe that has been, well, I'll use myself as an example because I can't use somebody else's. I've been in the profession for going on 40 years. And say I've worked in several different companies, but in one company maybe I worked there for 20 years and I had several different positions. So when you're writing your resume and your positions were, maybe I had one position in 2000 and then another one in 2001 and then another one in 2005. So when you're doing the resume and you're writing down your work experiences, do you have to list every single position that you had in one company, or can you just kind of clump that all together?
It's a great question, right? So, and in my space, I was faced with the same thing, right? I felt like I did a lot of things, but I was still in education, right? So one thing I kept in mind was, let me take out anything that's not relevant to this next position, right? And there were some things that weren't relevant, right? So then of the things that were relevant, I didn't necessarily talk about them as different jobs, but just different responsibilities under the broader scope. So I'll give you an example, right? So I worked for Guilford County Schools, but I was an assistant principal, I've been a principal, I've been a EC teacher assistant, I've been a graduation coach, I've been, right? So I've had all these different roles and titles. I take out the ones that aren't applicable to the next role. And then my time with Guilford County Schools is the job, right? It's the beginning and the end. And then each job or each position I had are just different responsibilities underneath. So it doesn't look like I got this job and then lost it in a year, and then they moved me here and then I lost it in a year, right? So I worked for Guilford County Schools, and these are all the things they've had me do. That's how I would frame my resume. Take out anything that's not relevant, and then make sure that it all looks like I've had continuous employment with Guilford County Schools for that time, and these are the different responsibilities I've had when I was there. And I think actually that makes you a little more attractive because it shows your versatility, it shows your flexibility, and that you have a wide range of skills.
So I just wanted to piggyback on that, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
As an employer, one of the things that I have found to be very attractive about certain resumes is when things are, now, it used to be that when we used the typewriter and things like that, we didn't have a choice. It was just a line, same format, all that kind of thing. But now we have so many different options where we can use bold. We can use even boxes and, all kinds of things. So, like, for instance, if I'm interviewing someone for a job in quality, if they highlight and use certain terminology such as to call out their experiences in quality, that will draw my attention. And I will see the trend of, okay, and walk away with the idea of they have experience in quality versus it being kind of buried in there. So to your point about making the resume specific to the job that you're applying for, think about what do you want for them to walk away with? What overall image of you? And if it's someone, because everyone's not going to read every word. Some people are going to scan it and look for certain things, and if they don't see it initially, you may get to the other pile and may not even get to that second phase to get the interview, right? So make it easy for them and highlight the things that you want for them to walk away with, I would say.
Great point, great point.
One other thing I'll say is that when you put those things on, always frame the things you do in terms of the results that you got, because that's what people are looking for. I had this job and I got this result. So it shows what you accomplish.
Absolutely, and numbers talk, right? And I think that's what Reverend Green has mentioned. The numbers talk. You want to highlight how you were able to help move an organization from point A to point B. In our world, we talk about test scores, we talk about graduation rate, we talk about scholarship dollars, right? We talk about teacher turnover rates, right? Those are tangible numbers that you can put on a resume to highlight your effectiveness in a said position, right? And I 100% believe that there's not a space or an employment opportunity or a job that you might be working that you can't quantify what you do, right? Find a way to quantify what you're currently doing for the intention to highlight that for your next employment opportunity. Great questions, guys. Thank you. Keep them coming.
I'm sorry, I was just going to share one more thing. One of the things that I do actually with my resume that I've gotten good feedback on is I kind of have that, that 30-second intro. I do it in writing at the top of my resume. So right underneath my name, I have just a couple of sentence blurb of this is me, this is what I can bring to the table. So just in case someone doesn't read through the whole thing, they know right off the bat that, and I put numbers in it.
Absolutely.
Audited in 15 different countries, this, that, and the other. And this is what I can bring, to the table. So that seems to go over well. And then the other thing is when we were talking about students, I've found that to be very helpful for them to have a resume as early as when they can apply for anything, really. Whether it be a scholarship, or award or recognition, which now our kids can do in elementary school. So having a list and something on paper, whether it be even if it's a one-page blurb, and if possible, even put their picture on it. That way, if something comes up at the last minute, an opportunity that that they may qualify for, you can send that to the teacher or whoever you're asking for that recommendation, and they can have tangible evidence and items to be able to put in that letter of recommendation. Because I've been on the reviewing side where I've reviewed scholarships for students, and I've seen letters that were written, and I'm like, do they really know this child? Because they may have incorrect information in there or call a person he when they identify as a she, all different kinds of stuff. So just giving that to the person that you're asking for the recommendation for so that they can be, have tangible things to put into their letter can be very helpful.
Great point. We get asked for students ask us to write recommendations for them all the time. And even if you're not searching for a job currently, it would be great for your students to have a resume, even if it's for nothing other than I'll have some information to write a recommendation for you, a strong recommendation to give off to you. It also made me think, so me personally, your resume, I update my resume at least twice a year, or at least once a year, no more than twice, but at least once a year. It's a working document for me. As things come up throughout the year, as great things happen, I'll update my resume. When test scores come in, I'll update my resume. When the end of the school year gets here and we're looking at everything we did, I update my resume because there might be an opportunity that comes knocking, and you need to have a fresh resume ready. And you're not going to do a great job at remembering what happened in August and trying to get it done because they said, you know what, I got the perfect job for you. You know what, send me your resume tonight, and so I can get you an interview for next week. You don't have time to go back and work through a resume. So you wanted your resume to be a working document. Even if you're not actively seeking employment at the time, you could be happy, you could love where you're at, you could be satisfied, but you still want your resume to be updated. And if you think about it that you're just updating it, you don't have to feel guilty that I'm trying to put myself out there, because it's not what it's about. It's just about having the most accurate representation of yourself and what you do. So I would encourage you to update your resume once, maybe twice a year, regardless of if you're looking for employment or not.
Okay, so Reverend Jackson brought up a good point, that something that's I've gone back and forth, pictures on resumes. I want to speak to that. I want you, to share a little bit about that, the pros and cons of it. And then also, okay, I can't think of the other question I had. I'll come back.
All right. So I think that's one of the preference things we talked about, right? For me, I would not advise it, and I would not advise it for a couple of reasons. One reason, unfortunately, in today's society that we live in, right, we judge people, right? We judge people by their names, we judge people by how they look, by how they talk, how they identify themselves, right? And the reality of it, you could be applying for a position where the employer wants a certain person, or wants a certain look, or wants a certain this or a certain that. And if you don't match that, you putting your picture on that doesn't even get you into the door to be able to have the opportunity to change their mind. And regardless of how I look, I still am the best person for this job, right? So it's not right, but it's the world we live in. So that's why me personally, I would advise against it. But I can probably line up 10 people that'll be up here, and maybe half of them will tell you otherwise. I don't think it's something detrimental, but you don't control who your resume goes to. You don't control who sees it and how they'll take that. But I will tell you this, if you do choose to put your photo up there, I would make it a headshot. I would make it a professional headshot, maybe from here up. Obviously with professional clothes on, with professional hairstyle, and make it a very professional photo, right? Not something that you might have took at a party or something like that, right? So if you are going to take a picture and put it on your resume, make sure it doesn't, unless you're interviewing for something on radio or on TV, right? Maybe you don't do that, and make sure it doesn't overpower your resume, right? I shouldn't remember your picture versus your resume, but what's going to happen is I'm going to spend a lot of time probably looking at your picture, and it has nothing to do with what you're interviewing for. So if what you look like has nothing to do with the job, I don't know why we would need it. But that's just, again, my personal preference.
And I will say something in support of that. I applied for a job in the upper Midwest once, and I was meeting the human resource organization in a hotel, and dressed very professionally, and I looked like no one else in that hotel lobby. Of course, I knew him because I had Googled him to know exactly who he was. And I watched him walk in, and I didn't say anything, and walk all over that hotel lobby and talk to 4 or 5 people to see if he was the candidate, and knowing that I was the candidate. So afterwards, after he walked around, I went and introduced myself, say, hey, I'm Amos. Oh, you're the candidate. So that was that start. Had the interview because I got into there, and I got the job, and executive level job. However, if my picture had been on that resume, I guarantee you in the upper Midwest, I wouldn't have gotten the interview. They wouldn't have flown me up there for that interview. And I cannot watch that happen.
Right. And the sad part is you don't know, right? So I would err on the side of caution on that, unless the job has something to do with how you look or present yourself.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add a point of clarity. So the time when I feel like the picture on the resume is helpful whenever a student is asking for a recommendation from a teacher, because sometimes, especially in high school, you can have so many students in the classroom.
Right.
And just to make sure that they, can identify, okay, this is that student that's asking for that, and they can make the connection as they write their letter or what have you. But that was the
Yeah, I think that's a safe place and a reasonable place to do that, absolutely. right.
Okay, one more question. So I know we live in a very technology savvy society. When is it appropriate to say, hey, I have a virtual resume, or, tell the difference between when you should always have that paper copy, or, a lot of times in technology driven societies or atmospheres, we think we should just say, hey, it's already on my website, here's my card, you can go check my resume out, versus having that tangible paper copy. Is it or is it either or depends on the atmosphere?
That's a great question because of where we are, right? I mean, but it also depends on what you're interviewing for or what you're applying for. If you're, I have a brother-in-law that is in the media industry, right? So it will be nothing for him to have a video of himself talking about himself and like more so a video resume. And that would be very appropriate in his field out in LA, right? It would not be as appropriate for me in public education. So I think when you're shopping yourself around, again, it goes back to the point you're preparing for the job that you want in that specific industry. So is it an and? It could be an and. I think if you're teetering, like, I want to step into that area, I think it would be wise to go ahead and have that prepared, whether you're ready to get it out there or not. I think it would be wise to get that prepared if you want a career in maybe entertainment or where you're working in the digital space. I think it helps to market your digital abilities and your capabilities, right, and your talents there. If you're in a space where creativity is really valued, I think it can help market your creativity and your technology skills. So I think there's definitely a place for it, and I think in 2023 we're absolutely moving forward. Actually, in my preparation for today, I saw a lot of different types of resumes, and some of them were virtual resumes, right, with people in front of a camera talking about their qualifications and how they do things. They have even PowerPoint presentations that are resumes, right? So again, I think it's very important to be able to speak to your audience and what is of value to them and their organization. You'll know that by their mission and by their vision. So if that's a place that you're teetering on, I would definitely say have that prepared and ready to go for when that opportunity presents itself. Great question. Thank you for that one.
We have Reverend Green walking a lot today. He's getting his steps in. So one of the things that you also talked about was about dress. And I just wanted to mention something as African-American female that tends to be a hot topic for us, and that's about our hair. Okay, so one of the things that I find that a lot of females kind of grapple with is how to wear their hair during the interview. Do I need to assimilate and, straighten my hair and have it the way that they may find acceptable, or do I wear it in my natural state? All of that kind of thing. And I have to say that I went through the same thing when I first started working. Of course, that was about 25 years ago in terms of in corporate America, and I thought that I had to have my hair a certain way, and then it wouldn't be until maybe 2-3 years later, they're like, wait a minute, or you look different, because I finally felt comfortable wearing it the way that I want it. But I have since learned that it is best to show up as you, the person that they're going to see on day 5, week 4, what have you. And if they, and this is me, of course, saying this is me and not paying anyone else's bills, but if they, I'm just at this point in life now that if they can't take me as me, and that doesn't mean I'm going to wear my T-shirt that says whatever, right. I'm going to dress appropriately and, professionally and that kind of thing. But my hair, being in its natural state, has nothing to do with my professionalism. As long as I am clean, and that kind of thing, then I'm going to show up as me. And we have to, just be able to have that confidence to walk in as we are.
I would agree. I would agree. Thank you.
I have a question. How do you feel employers look at social media accounts when it comes to making their decisions about candidates?
Thank you so much, especially with the young people we're speaking to today. Thank you so much. First of all, I will say that nothing is ever deleted. All right? Nothing is ever deleted. You can delete it from your phone, and then it go to another place in your phone. And then you can delete it from there, and then it go up in the cloud, right? We all know that, right? So nothing is ever deleted. So employers definitely will look at your social media footprint, right? They want to know who you are, because we all know that we're going to put forth our best version of ourselves in the interview process. You're going to ask me if I'm willing to do this and if I'm willing to do that, and I'm going to tell you, yes, I am. But I'm going to look at your Facebook page or your social media page, your Instagram page, or your Snapchat to see if what you're telling me in front of me matches with what I see behind the scenes, right? And that is something that is so very important for all of us to know, but especially our young people who spend a lot more time there. Again, we talk about always interviewing. Depending on who's following you, you're always interviewing, right? So let's say I'm a 16-year-old student, and my 16-year-old friend follows me on social media. His mom happens to see, because she's looking through his phone, and she sees some things that me and him are doing that might not be, the best things, right? It might not put us in the best light. But little do I know, his mom is the manager at Foot Locker, and I'm trying to get a job at Foot Locker, right? We're always interviewing, right? And we never know who has access and can see those things. You can make your page as private as you want, but if it's private and I've shared my page with you, I can't control who you share my page with or my photos with, right? So we always got to keep that in mind. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that is actually an informal reference check, right? So as an employer, before I hire you, I'm going to call your last two bosses. I'm going to call a professional reference. But I also know that the references you give me are probably going to be somebody that speaks highly of you. That's why you put them on there, right? So I want something authentic, right? So if I have the time, I have the energy, and this position is that important to me, I might look and Google your name and see what pops up, right? I might look and Google your Instagram account and see what pops up. I don't have to follow you to see the first 3 pictures that pop up on your Instagram account, because that's exactly what happened. If you don't believe me, Google yourself, right, and see what happens, or put your Instagram name in and see what happens. So that's a free, informal way for me to check your references without picking up the phone and calling anybody. That might make me not call anybody. So keep that in mind when you're posting things to social media. Great point. Thank you so much for presenting that. And I want to mention, so that led me to think of something else, right? References. I talked about making sure we put them on there, but we didn't talk about the types of references, right? So when you put a reference on your resume, you want it to be a professional reference, right? I would say a good rule of thumb is 3 references. 2 of them at least need to be professional. 1 of them should be your current or most recent employer, right? Now, there are going to be situations why you may not want to put that, but when that's not there, it's going to put a red flag in my head, right? And that's just what it is, right? So there might have been bad experiences. I think we've all probably had some not so great experiences at work, and we'd rather not put this or rather not put that. But just keep in mind that it is going to raise a question in somebody's head. Well, the last place you worked was Grimsley High School, right? But the reference you gave me was for Claxton Elementary School. What's up with that, right? And I might be thinking in my head, I might never ask you, but I'm going to be thinking, well, he might have had a bad experience there. Maybe he didn't, but I want to hear from that person now. It makes me want to hear from that person even more to know why you chose not to put that that person down on your reference sheet. I see a lot of folks that have their church family on their resume. Well, I appreciate that, right? I do. But unless they can speak to how you do at work, then I know that this is somebody that loves you dearly, and they're going to tell me anything they need to tell me to help you get a job, right? Which they should. but is it an authentic reference? I couldn't always say that it is, right? So you want to have professional references. If you're a student, you put a professor, you put a teacher, you put a counselor, a coach, right? Those can be, that might be as professional of a reference as you have, and that's fine. A scout leader, right? You put those down as your references. And then if there's somebody that you're really close to, maybe a mentor or something like that, you can list them as a mentor. But you should always still have a professional reference. At least 2 of those 3 references should be professional references. All right. So if there are no more questions, we're going to turn it over to Ms. Jackson, and she's going to help us transition. All right? Thank you guys for your time. Great questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harris. I tell you, this was just a phenomenal presentation. The questions were great, led to wonderful conversations and further information. So thank you again. So now what we have is the opportunity to be able to transition into some interviews. And also, I do want to bring up some of our representatives today that we have, some of our guests, to be able to just introduce what they have to offer as well. We have the opportunity, like I said, to do some practice interviews. If you brought your resume with you, we'll be more than happy to take a look at those. We have some employers, Dr. Harris here as well, and we have the NC Works Mobile Career Center. Yay! So excited about that. Out in the parking lot, they have a ton of resources there, right there on what we call the bus, but the Mobile Career Center, including opportunities to search for jobs, resume writing, and some other resources there. So we want you to take advantage of those. And they will be here until 3. So if you have, a colleague or friend, that's looking for something, tell them, hey, come on out. It's not over yet. So at this time, I would like to ask for our guests that are here with resources, if you could come up and just introduce what you have to offer, and we will do that. And thank you so much for coming.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so very much for this very informative workshop. My name is Elizabeth Leak, and I'm a program outreach coordinator with NC Works. And I'm so glad for the opportunity to be here to share some of the resources that we offer. Our website, ncworks.gov, offers an opportunity for people to do job searches, also to do skill assessments. It has a lot of different things that you can explore, but there's also a resume builder on there. So you can, put as many resumes as you want on our website and, just have the opportunity to send those out to employers or make it visible to employers as they do job searches with us. Along with me is my coworker, Kimberly Ryder. She didn't want to come up, but she is our digital skills instructor, and so she is the person that you will look to as far as getting your resume updated if you need additional assistance with that, and also if you want to do mock interviews or anything. So we appreciate being here. Hope that we can be a resource while we're here. We're located at 2301 West Meadowview Road here in Greensboro, and we also have an office in High Point at 607 Idle Street. So just feel free to stop by the office, our Mobile Career Center. If you ever want to have that at any of your events, just reach out to me and let me know, and we're always out in the community. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon. We're from the Family Success Center. Previously known as Gifford Child Development. We are so appreciative to have the opportunity to come out and share our services on today. So thank you for the invitation to come. And thank you so much for sharing. I did take some notes like I said I would. So I've enjoyed everything that we've heard thus far. This is also Ms. Hudson. She's one of our teachers in the Family Success Center. And I myself, as one of the success coaches, we work it's a Head Start program. And we also have different departments within the umbrella. The new name of it is Children and Families First. So we just changed the name at the end of last year. And so many different departments within. And so we work with the Family Success Center, where we work with the parents of the children that is in our Head Start program, and also in the community as well. So it's not just for our children that's currently in our program. But we do offer several programs where we help families. We want to work holistically with the families based on their needs. So they come to us and they establish what their goals are. Some of them generally want to go back to work. So we do help them to get a job. If they're currently working, we want to help them to get a better job. And then after that, a career. And we do partner with a lot of our community. NC Works, we partner with them, Goodwill, to help these families achieve their goals. We do have some families that come to us, they want to get the GED. So we partner with GTCC, and we do offer a class at our Arlington Street site. So we try to work with the parents, whatever your needs are. If we don't do it in-house, then we partner with the community to help them achieve that goals, because we want to see families successful. We also have a money management program, because again, everybody needs to know how to handle money. So these are things that we want to help our families do to be successful in every area of their life. So if we can work with the parents and get them suited, then they can teach that information down to their children. So we'll work with different generations. And there's some other flyers that we have back on our table that showcase the different, I can't think of the word, thank you, different programs and resources for the family. So thank you, Ms. Hudson. She didn't want to say very much, but see, you helped me out. So it's still teamwork. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity. If you have any questions about any other programs that we may offer, feel free to stop by the table. And again, thank you.
Again, my name is Ms. Hudson. I'm one of the FSC teachers. I started out as a member. I've taken the money management classes, and they gave me like a monetary reward to help me open up a bank account. They provided childcare, so I was able to take care of whatever I needed to upstairs. So now I'm just giving back to the community. So if you or anyone you know may need resources and they have children, they're able to come, and the children will come downstairs in my care. So that is what we offer.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you for your time.
All right.
All right, so that is awesome. I am just so excited. So we have resources here for money management, how to get your GED, further educational opportunities, resume building, additional resources, job searches, childcare. There is no reason not to be successful. And thank you so much, Ms. Hudson, for that wonderful and powerful testimony of being engaged, getting the resources, and then giving back to your community. That is just awesome. Yes. That is what we like to see. So for those of you who are online, we have not forgotten about you. We have been monitoring the chat in case there were any questions. We will continue to do so. We are about to close this portion online to move into the engagement opportunities and be able to go to the Mobile Career Center. But what we will have is the resources and handouts that we have here. They will be here at New Zion Missionary Baptist Church. We will also work towards uploading them as well on our website so that they can be made available to you, so that none of us will have an excuse, right? So we thank all of you. Are there any further questions or comments? Yes, thank you so much. Also, we do have a survey we want people to complete both online and also those of you who are here. There is a scan code that you can scan, and we'll try to include the link as well online. And please do that because we want to incorporate the feedback for future workshops. We will have our next series, speaking of money management, we will have our next workshop on March 18th. From 1 to 3 as well. We're going to have the same format where we will be here in person. We'll have some engagement opportunities, but we will also offer it via live stream for those who are not able to attend in person. So we will be talking about money management, and we will have a session called Ask the Banker. So please join us next month as well. So if there are no further questions or comments, we're good here? Okay, so thank you all so much who joined us online, and we will transition to the opportunities that we have here. Thank you all.